Hi friends. Today we are trying to learn what is non-alignment movement. As the name indicates, what do you mean by non-alignment movement? Non-alignment movement is not aligning with any of a power block. That is basically what is known as non-alignment movement. The history, if you look at the history of non-alignment movement, it goes back to a time when there is a massive decolonization. Decolonization is nothing but the colonies which were being ruled by the European powers started leaving these colonies and going back to their home country. So this process almost started from the end of Second World War and almost towards the end of 1950s. So India and many other countries become independent in this juncture. We all know that as we got independence in 1947, like us, there are many countries which were once ruled by the colonial powers got independence in between this period of time. So after the Second World War, the prominence of Europe came down, or till the Second World War. So till the Second World War, the power center was basically Britain. Britain was a superpower in all the sector, and she was able to capture many colonies across the world. So after the Second World War, the prominence of Europe, especially Britain, came down and new power blocks emerged. Those were basically USA and USSR. So USA and USSR become two major power blocks after the Second World War. So this is one of the major results of even Second World War, that the power centers, the epi power centers of the world was cornered between USA and USSR. So all the countries of the world were either with USA or USSR. So in this juncture, India was getting independence. So our first Prime Minister, who was a great statesman, decided that India should not go either with US or USSR, and India should have a foreign policy where India should have equidistance between US as well as USSR. So this particular policy of not aligning with USA or USSR is called as non-alignment movement. This was initiated by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and it has got a widespread support from many countries, especially in the newborn independent countries in the Asia as well as Africa. The main three leaders of NAM were Jawaharlal Nehru, then Tito, and Nasser. These were the three people who were the major or the prominent leaders of non-alignment movement. Yeah. So we'll go back to we'll go to the next slide. So this is a time when we are talking about a massive competition between US on one hand and USSR on the other hand. This was just not a mere competition based on to become powerful in the world. This was a competition in all spectrum of the life. Like one country was capitalist, on the other country was socialist. One country was following a system where there was a liberal democratic space. The other country was a communist space. So there was basically a competition between these two set of countries in all aspects in the world. So in this juncture, there are many countries from Asia as well as in Africa were getting independence, like India, Yugoslavia, Egypt, and many other countries. So the colonial powers, basically Britain and other European countries, left all their colonies in Asia and Africa after Second World War because they could not hold the colonies, because they got such a great economic blow in the Second World War. They have to have a strong economic basis to hold the colonies, which they thought they cannot do after the Second World War because they become less powerful. So the epicenter or the power got divided between US on one side and USSR on the other side. So these two countries emerged as the major power blocks in the world. So those countries which were taking part in Second World War and those were not independent at the time got separated themselves between either US and USSR. So in this juncture, many countries like India comes into the forefront. So they have to also either go with US or USSR. But we followed, or we initiated, the better word is initiated. We initiated a special movement called non-alignment movement, where we don't either align with US or USSR, and we stick to be neutral with both these countries and put forth a different ideology to the world itself. Yeah. Non-alignment means attempt by a nation to keep itself aloof from military blocs. See, military blocs is nothing but USA and USSR. It means trying to view things as far as possible, not from military point of view, though that has to come in sometimes. But we must have independent viewpoint, must have friendly relation. See these 2 points. The independent viewpoint as well as friendly relation. So this is the definition of Pandit Nehru. So he is trying to tell that if you are going with USA or USSR, or if you are going to align with them, you won't be having an independent view as well as friendly relations with all other countries. So this is a crux of non-alignment movement. Moving into the other slide. Yeah, this is just a background of non-alignment movement. Yeah. Before defining non-alignment movement, let us know what is a non-alignment. So initially, there are many Western scholars who try to conceptualize what is neutrality, neutrism, neutralization to define non-alignment. A famous scholar, George Schwenberger, referred to 6 terms. He have referred 6 terms to the definition of non-alignment, that is isolationism, non-commitment, neutrality, neutralization, unilateralism, and non-involvement, which were in some ways similar to non-alignment, but none of this could be used for defining non-alignment. So, though many people try to say that these are the meaning of non-alignment, but it is not the real meaning of non-alignment, because all these things are very different. If you look at isolationism, stands for a policy of aloofness. Like we won't interfere in anything. But non-alignment is not aloofness. Likewise, non-commitment. It refers to a policy of detachment from others' power in a multi-corner relationship. This basically means that a politics of detachment. Non-alignment is not a politics of detachment. So you cannot also call isolationism or even non-commitment. Next one is neutrality, which describes the political and legal status of a state which decide to remain neutral in any war. This is also not a feature of non-alignment. So, see, neutrality basically describes the political and legal status of a state which decide to remain neutral in any war. Neutralization means permanent legal status of neutrality conferred on a state. Yeah, so in the opinion of different scholars, all these features cannot define what exactly is non-alignment. Non-alignment is, look at the sentence, neither legal status nor a diplomatic means or not even a principle of aloofness and inaction. So this is basically trying to tell that non-alignment movement is not a policy of aloofness, it is a policy of intervention. Whenever you need to intervene, you have to intervene and try to bring in the peace. So aloofness and these kind of terms cannot be equated to non-alignment movement. One second. Yeah. So this could be a simple definition of non-alignment. Non-alignment simply denotes a foreign policy which opposes Cold War, alliances, and aggressive power politics, which stands for independence in foreign relations based on principles such as peace, friendship, cooperation with all. See, everybody used to accredit Nehru for creating such a movement or such a great gift to the world when in a time the world was divided into two power blocks. So it simply denotes a foreign policy which totally denies or opposes Cold War, alliances, aggressive power politics, whereas it is standing for independence in foreign relations based on the principles such as peace, friendship, and cooperation. So this is trying to tell that we are opposing Cold War, alliances, and aggressive politics on one side, and the other side we are standing for independence in our foreign relations, which is based on peace, friendship, cooperation with all. Yeah, so now we are trying to understand the formation of NAM. Though this idea was put forth by Nehru, the first conference or the first incident that led to the emergence of NAM was Bandung Conference, which was held in 1955 in Bandung in Indonesia. So at Bandung, all the NAM leaders were united and agreed with each other and decided to support UN. And the 5 Panchashil principles that India adopted with China was also accepted in this meeting. This meeting was presided over by Jawaharlal Nehru, Chow Enlai, who was the Chinese premier, and Nasser, PM of Egypt. So Bandung Conference is basically, you cannot say exactly the first conference of NAM. It was basically a movement or an attempt to create NAM. So the first conference was Bandung Conference, which was held in 1955 in Yugoslavia, which adopted Panchashil and other friendly principles as a principle for defining the relationship between nations. Yeah, the next one is Belgrade Conference, which is in Yugoslavia. This is basically the first conference or the first summit that led to the emergence of NAM. Belgrade Conference is the first summit of NAM, which was held in September 1961. It was attempted by different leaders, including 3 founding fathers of NAM, that is Nehru, Tito, and Nasser. Yeah, so Nehru is from India, Tito is from Yugoslavia, Nasser from Egypt. Though Chow Enlai, who was also a part of Bandung, didn't took active participation in the second conference or the main conference, which led to the emergence of NAM. So the issues discussed were complete disarmament of all weapons, and it was a total opposition on imperialism, colonialism, racial discrimination, and this particular conference requested UN to accept China in UN and also to make China as a permanent member in Security Council. It is a funny fact that India and even the NAM countries try to seat China in the 5 permanent member Security Council of UN, but now India is trying to get a permanent seat in Security Council, which is opposed by China. And there was also problems which were there in Berlin and Congo. So these issues were discussed elaborately in Belgrade Conference, and the conference or the instance which led to the emergence of NAM is nothing but Belgrade Conference of Yugoslavia in 1961. So these are the 3 people. Nehru, this is the middle one is Nehru, and the tallest person is Tito, and the last one is Nasser. So Nehru, Nasser, and Tito. These 3 people were the founding fathers of non-alignment movement, which has got a prominent role in the world. But many people try to argue that the role of non-alignment movement became unimportant or less important after the collapse of USSR or after the end of Cold War. But that is not true, because though it is stated that the primary objective of NAM is to oppose the Cold War, it is also trying to put it the other objective that the non-alignment movement is trying to build a foreign relation which is basically based on peace, harmony and peaceful coexistence. Though even if there is no active fight between USA and USSR, this particular ideology have got a prominence all over the world in all time. Do you think after disintegration of USSR there was no world conflict? That is not true. There were there are a number of conflicts which were minor, there were wars. So NAM is a platform which tried to build foreign relations based on peace, harmony and peaceful coexistence. So now we will move on to the features of non-alignment foreign policy. The first one is opposition to Cold War, which I have told you. The first and foremost feature of non-alignment policy is opposition of Cold War. The origin of non-alignment came at a time when USA and USSR got involved in the Cold War. Cold War was a competition between USA and USSR in all spheres of their life. The peace after Second World War was a tense peace as the Cold War between the two superpowers was keeping the world at the brink of a new war. So as I have told you, there was active competition in military, in science and all spheres of life. I think I have told you, when USSR was able to send Yuri Gagarin to moon, USA retaliated by sending Neil Armstrong to moon. Yeah, so there is an active fight between USA and USSR in all spheres of life. As I was telling you, the USSR was able to send Yuri Gagarin to space, and so US want to retaliate it by sending Neil Armstrong to moon. And there was active competition for military, territorial and I have explained you the situations about the Korean crisis, Cuban Missile Crisis, even the issue between Afghanistan and USSR. In all these conflicts, these two power blocks started standing against each other. So the first and foremost objective of non-alignment foreign policy was the opposition of Cold War. And the second one is the opposition of military and security alliances. I have told you, during the Second World War, there was many active military alliances like NATO, SETO, Warsaw, and these are the major different pacts that were signed during the Cold War. These pacts were made in such a way that if one country is attacked, the countries which were involved in the pact would retaliate. So this is basically military alliances. So military alliance would definitely lead to a situation of war, and that is the major threat of these kind of security alliances. Like look at NATO, SETO. NATO and SETO were the alliance of US. Warsaw was the alliance of USSR. So these alliances were trying to keep the world at the verge of another world war. So we are moving into the next slide. Yeah. The third one is non-involvement in power politics. Non-alignment emerged as an anti-power politics concept. It rejects the concept of struggle to be more powerful than others. So it is basically trying to say that we are not ready, we are not happy to involve in power politics. We try to stick on to our own developmental issues. Like see non-alignment rejects unhealthy struggle for local, regional, continental or world domination. So the non-alignment denies all kind of competition for a world domination which is based on regional, continental or any kind of competition. It is opposed to the concept of power for the sake of power or status. So it is basically a movement that totally negated power politics in its all form. Yeah, moving to the next slide. So the fourth one is peaceful coexistence and non-interference. This is a part of India's Panchashil also, that we should be allowing other countries to peacefully coexist, and we should not even interfere in the internal affairs of the other country. So the non-alignment accept the peaceful coexistence and non-interference as the two basic principles of international relations. It believed that Cold War and its attempts to maintain peace through preparation of war was unjust and harmful. So it basically tried to say that, like, we are not going to have a war with any nation, and we would like to have a peaceful coexistence with another nation, and also do not interfere in their internal issues, but make sure that they would cooperate each other for mutual benefit, world peace and prosperity, not for war, military and other things. So this is basically based on peaceful coexistence, non-interference, and which is working for mutual benefit, world peace and prosperity, not for war, unjust and harmful principles. Moving into the next slide. Yeah, independence in foreign relation. Let's assume that India went and joined with USSR, and do you think India would be able to take an independent stand in any kind of foreign issue? No, it cannot. So the other feature of non-alignment movement was that India was able to take a strong independent stand in foreign relation. It involves keeping of principles of keeping the independence of foreign policy of each nation. In fact, the origin of non-alignment was also due to the desire of new state to keep their foreign policy independent from the possible pressure from superpowers. The best example for that is India. We all know that India was ruled by Britishers for 200 years of time. So when we got independent, we felt that we should not take a stand where again we will be under a colonial legacy, or we should not be under the pressure of a superpower. So we felt that we should have a separate independent foreign policy. Here I would tell you one more thing. Though India initiated non-alignment movement and India was a strong proponent of non-alignment movement, if you look at the pragmatic politics of India, India was close with USSR. But India was never an ally of USSR. India was close with USSR almost till its disintegration. But this is a very contrasting thing that now India is more close with USA. But during the Cold War, when India was close with USSR, Pakistan was close with USA. This was a situation that prevailed from almost 1950 to 1991. But now the situation has got changed. India is more close with USA. And if you look at almost all weapons that Indian Army Armed Force have are basically received from USSR, and even the technology that we got from USSR. Yeah. So the fifth point is independence in the foreign relation. We will move on to the next slide. A policy of action and not isolationism. This is a very prominent thing. If, let's say, two of your friends are fighting each other, you can take a policy of isolationism. You can sit beside and make a stand that let them fight. I am not going to interfere in that. I am isolated from that. Do you think that is good? No. Your duty is to intervene and make sure that they don't fight. So this is the second one is called non-alignment. Isolation is not non-alignment movement. So the practice of keeping away from international relation or a policy of non-action is not a part of non-alignment. Non-alignment stand for distinguishing between right and wrong and supporting the right. See, this is the point of non-alignment movement. Then moving into the seventh one. A non-alignment is neither a diplomatic policy nor a legal status. It is not a diplomatic neutrality which a nation may practice in time of an international crisis. See, let's say when there is a fight between two nations, take the case of India. Let's assume that India and Israel, let's assume that US and Israel is fighting, and India consider both of them as their friends. So in this fight alone, India can take a stand that we are going to be neutral. We are not going to either go with any of this country in this particular situation alone. But you cannot take a stand like that in all situations. So that's why we can say that non-alignment is not a diplomatic neutrality which a nation may practice in the time of an international crisis. Diplomatic neutrality involves a policy of no nation even when the fact of crisis are known. It is also not the wartime neutrality by which a nation acquires a neutral status and remain away from war and wartime alliances. It is not a neutrality which is predominant in the time of a war or an international crisis. It is a prolonged policy that the nations who are the part of non-alignment should follow, that they should believe in an international system which is based on peaceful coexistence and mutual non-interference. Yeah. So we are moving into the eighth one. Non-alignment is not alignment of non-aligned. This is another factor. Now we have two power blocks, USA and USSR, and non-alignment is not going to be a third power block or a third force. Okay, this is one of the major prominent feature that Nehru keep on insisting. He said that this is not a power block. The aim of non-alignment is to build up an area of peace, an area which reject war, Cold War alliances and support peace in a positive way. And it is not a third force or a third block. This is one of the major prominent feature of non-alignment movement. Coming into the ninth one, the last one. Non-alignment is a policy of peaceful international cooperation for development. Yeah, this is the prominence, or this feature gives the prominence of non-alignment movement even in the current world. That it is giving, or it is a policy of peaceful international cooperation for development. It stands for peace through peaceful coexistence and cooperation. It is based on the premise that war is not inevitable and it can be avoided. So they say that war is not a solution for anything. It can be avoided for any circumstances. Cold War, military alliances and power politics are based upon the concept of inevitability of war. So non-alignment reject war and also military alliances and power politics. So these are the 9 important features of non-alignment movement. Moving into the next slide. These are the fundamental characteristics of NAM. In 1961, Nasser, Nehru, Tito accepted the following 5 essentials or test of non-alignment foreign policy. Independent foreign policy based on non-alignment and peaceful coexistence. As I have told you, the 1961 Belgrade Conference said that these are going to be the fundamental nature of NAM. Like all the nations as a part of NAM will be having an independent foreign policy which is based on non-alignment and peaceful coexistence. Second one is the opposition to colonialism and support to liberation movement. This was a non-alignment movement was also a movement which is totally against colonialism in all its form, and it supported independent liberated movements, which means that though countries like India got independence in the late 1940s, there were many countries which were even at that point of time being ruled by the European countries. So they also supported liberation movements in those countries. Third one, non-membership of any military alliance or bloc. The other feature is that the members of NAM is not going to be part of any military pact, whether it is NATO, Versa, or any other military pact. Moving to the last slide. The absence of bilateral military base or base on territory of the state, and the absence of foreign military base on the territory of the state. This is basically trying to tell that when I was telling you the situation between USA and USSR, USA might have aligned countries where they will have foreign base in those countries so that they can attack any targeted country of the other bloc. Yeah, let's assume like this. Even now there are many like military base of US in Gulf. This is predominantly because they keep it in such a way that if there is any issues in West Asia, they can operate suddenly from that military base. So non-alignment movement also tried to curb all these kind of military base on the territory of the state, and also the absence of military base on the territory of the state. So these are basically the important features, the history of NAM, and even the way in which this foreign policy was framed and followed in the world. The important prominence of NAM is that this is not a power block, a third power block. It is basically a platform which is based on peaceful coexistence as well as mutual non-interference. Yeah. Thank you all.